largely a consideration for Delirium and for Tarmogoyf. This is a matchup where that choice could be very impactful for Cohen in a bad way, as Eldrazi Displacer is a problematic card for him.
Also, you want to be able to bolt some other threats in there as well. I mean, Tar Fire doesn't really kill a ton of stuff. That's the problem.
Hierarch and the Sky Spawner.
Yeah, that's really it.
But Sauer, with a lot of mana and an unchecked Eldrazi Displacer, can essentially lock Cohen out of the game.
Here's a Thoughtseize. You'll see a Talisman of Progress. That's the blue-white Talisman. A Reality Smasher and Ancient Stirrings. And then a couple of lands here. 2 Brush Lands, a Cavernous Souls, and it looks to be a Temple Garden as Cohen's going to write down the contents that he has seen here from Thoughtseize. Justin off to a beautiful start, already down to 13.
Yes. Everything going as planned.
Yes.
Took a bunch of damage, put a bunch of stuff in his graveyard.
It's not quite Tarfire to the face, but
he has a Tarfire in hand, so he still has access to that line next turn.
Beautiful.
Looks like a pretty land-heavy hand here for Cohen, though. I believe I see 2 copies of Verdant Catacombs alongside Godless Shrine.
Yeah, and then another Thoughtseize and a Tarfire. So not a lot going on as he selects a Reality Smasher there with the Thoughtseize. And he'll pass the turn back over to John Sauer. Sauer will draw a copy of Thought-Knot Seer. And we'll see if we will see in Ancient Stirrings. There's Temple Garden to start. Sauer's going to fall down to 18, and it will be the powerful sorcery. Sauer will take a look at the top 5 cards. Engineered Explosives among them, and also another copy of Reality Smasher if he does want to go that route. I don't think, however, he has found a copy of Eldrazi Temple just yet.
But this is still a really nice look, and I think with a hand with a bunch of lands, a Talisman, and now a Thought-Knot Seer, Sauer's in the market for more either threats or answers. I don't think he would take mana, even the Temple, as powerful as it is, if there was any sort of good proactive or reactive card in the hand.
Engineered Explosives is the weapon of choice there for John Sauer, as Justin Cohen has drawn another land. It's a copy of Marsh Flats.
And a lot of pressure on Cohen here to, get on the battlefield early, as the late game doesn't really favor him. Sauer's deck a lot more redundant with threats, and a lot of his threats can effectively lock Cohen out of the game. So this land-heavy start with a lot of discard and no threats is bad news for Cohen.
And they are making their way out to the
another copy of Thoughtseize.
Again on blue paper.
Sauer will show him the goods here. A couple of lands, the Talisman's still there. The Thought-Knot Seer and the Engineered Explosives are new for Justin Cohen to look at.
I mean, with this hand, I almost feel, well, my instinct is here to take the Thought-Knot Seer and hope that, the Sauer just doesn't draw any threats. You have a lot of time to draw out. The card might actually be Engineered Explosives, because the Thought-Knot Seer is not going to take anything of value. Most likely, Cohen could just cast any of the spells going forward. And any threat that he draws, either Death Shadow or Tarmogoyf, is going to outbrawl that Thought-Knot Seer.
I like the selection of Engineered Explosives. As Cohen's going to fall down to 11.
You can see his hand, it's just a Tarfire. He can cast that in response to the Thought-Knot Seer if he wants to. The rest of his hand is land, so that Thought-Knot not going to take anything impactful. It is a clock, but if Cohen is sort of leaning on drawing a threat card very soon anyway, then whatever.
You have to imagine he'll draw something eventually. As here's a copy of Eldrazi Sky Spawner off the top there for Sauer. I think we'll see the Talisman here in just a moment. He'll play a Brushland first. Talisman will follow it up, and he'll just simply pass the turn back over to Cohen. Cohen will sacrifice that Verdant Catacombs. He's going to fall down to at least 10, maybe 8. How low will he go? All right, just 10.
Yeah, he knows he's playing against the Thought-Knot Seer next turn. So if he were to play the Stomping Ground untapped, that puts him at 8, and now that Thought-Knot Seer is a 2-turn clock. And with the other lands that he has in his hand, if he draws a Death Shadow, it's very easy for him to take a lot of damage if he feels that's the line he needs to take.
Justin will shuffle and present, and then he will be drawing a card for his 3rd turn of the game. Not a great start here for Cohen to kick off Sunday morning, but perhaps this draw step is willing to cooperate. Collective Brutality, it appears. That's a sort of.
I mean, it's a way to convert the cards in his hand that aren't doing anything into something, but he knows the contents of Cohen's hand, of Sauer's hand, excuse me. And it's not like Collective Brutality is a great removal spell against Eldrazi either.
And he knows he's about to be targeted by Thought-Knot Seer, so there's just not a lot going on with that card at the moment.
Yeah, the question is just, I would imagine he may want to cast it with the intent of casting it and the Tarfire just to get him out of the hand preemptively. The question is, does he want to discard it all? For example, he could duress and drain for 2 if he feels like the lands in his hand don't do anything.
Well, he's already sacrificing a fetch land here in Marsh Flats. He's going to fall down to 9, excuse me. Certainly not 19.
Please make your way to the Gideon banner next to the Start SCG Tour feature match.
Now imagine he's looking for the swamp, save a little bit of life.
Okay.
Cast a Collective Brutality, maybe discard a card, maybe not, depending on if he thinks the lands have any value, and leave up a red mana to Tarfire in response to the Thought-Knot Seer I think Cohen assumes is coming next turn.
This round will begin in 30 seconds.
Well, I feel like Justin's thinking Collective Brutality with the way he separated his mana here. He's got the Swamp and the Stomping Ground in one area, the Blood Crypt in another.
I think it's just an issue of which land does he want to discard here, because he certainly doesn't need the 5th mana.
Looks like he's going to discard the Godless Shrine. And here's Collective Brutality with Escalade, a card that we'll take a look at here. Starting to become a modern mainstay.
It's excellent against burn, and then passable in a variety of matchups.
He does Escalate to do a little doming. Has Sauer lose 2. Justin will gain 2. Doesn't really like to gain life oftentimes with this deck, but
Needs a little bit of time.
yeah. Noble Hierarch the draw here for John Sauer. Now, question for you. You have an idea. Well, Sauer does not have a good idea of Justin Cohen's hand. But if he's got an idea of what this deck list generally does, you know Liliana the Veil does loom through these deck lists sometimes. He could just play Sky Spawner and Noble Hierarch this turn, or you could just go for the Haymaker and throw out a Thought-Knot Seer.
Yeah, I think you would have seen Liliana last turn. Again, Cohen's working with a lot of information about Sauer's hand. So Liliana the Veil, I think you would have seen last turn for sure as a preemptive measure against Thought-Knot Seer and to make sure it gets on the battlefield.
It's a little worrisome if he draws one right now.
I think Sauer probably was assuming that Cohen's hand was removal or nothing because he would have been casting his threat cards by now. But I think he wants to cast the Thought-Knot Seer regardless, even though he knows he's probably not going to get a premium card.
Well, Tarmogoyf has rolled off the top of the deck after a cycling of Street Wraith.
So currently we have creature, sorcery, artifact, tribal, land. So 5-6 is my count.
Instant too. Tarfire instant as well.
Yeah, so the regular 4 plus tribal. Land, sorcery, creature, land.
And artifact.
Artifact, so 6-7?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was the draw that Cohen needed. He needed to get to a threat card.
That's a pretty good one.
Yep.
Eldrazi Displacer is a pretty good one here for John Sauer.
And this is one of the really problematic cards in the matchup for Cohen's side, assuming the game drags out to this point. He doesn't have a lot of removal for it. I believe he's got Fatal Pushes and an Abrupt Decay. And if this card's unchecked, it's very hard for him to do much of anything.
Yeah, 2 Fatal Push in combination, of course, with Revolt, and 1 copy of Abrupt Decay. That is basically it.
So now Sauer's got the decision. The more efficient thing to do, I think, is Noble Hierarch plus the Sky Spawner. But if he thinks Displacer is so good, he may want to play it now to avoid it getting tagged by Inquisition of Kozilek or Thoughtseize.
Yeah, I like this line here a lot of just play the Sky Spawner, sacrifice the Scion, play the Eldrazi Displacer, pass the turn, mostly because I do not want Justin to appeal a discard spell to take the Displacer.
This is the best of both worlds now. That he's efficient with his mana. He's got a flyer on the battlefield he can start attacking with next turn. The only concern I had about this line is he's down a chump blocker.
Sure.
And that could be valuable. But getting the Displacer in play, not having to worry about a discard spell, probably outweighs the concern about being down the Scion.
And the nice thing here is that John gets to present lethal next turn.
Yeah.
He's got 9 on the table. And he's got Displacer to get any blockers out of the way. So Justin would have to have drawn a removal spell.
Yep. Sauer has the option of go and try to generate lethal next turn if that situation arises. And if not, he can play the Noble Hierarch, attack with the Sky Spawner, and sit behind his mana and Displacer. So he's got a very good setup here.
There's Death Shadow. Yeah, so if Sauer has a land, lights out. Picked up another copy of Noble Hierarch. Turn's still good here for John.
Yep. A land would have been lethal, but he's pretty safe in this spot.
because he can play a Noble Hierarch right now. He could actually take one to play another Noble Hierarch. And then he has the ability to displace his own Eldrazi Sky Spawner to create a chump blocker, generate a little more mana, whatever he'd like to do.
I would imagine the target here is Death Shadow, because the only real concern I think at this point is a Temur Battle Rage or similar effect off the top.
Sure. There's another Noble Hierarch. Looks like he's going to play pretty conservative here. Which I think might be fine.
Well, if nothing happens next turn, I suppose if Cohen draws a removal spell forward to the Displacer.
Picked up a copy of Liliana of the Veil, did Justin. I think the attack for 4 in the air was free. Or at least pretty gosh darn safe. I can see holding it back because he can lethal him next turn, now that he has access to double Displacer. But I think he could have got that shot in.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what the draw is, because Temur Battle Rage on the Tarmogoyf doesn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Here are the attackers. So right now, Death Shadow is a 4/4.
See, the problem with this line is it doesn't really play around Temur Battle Rage all that well, since I guess his hand is for. I guess he doesn't have to use the Displacer. He can just do this.
Yeah, if he displaces this, Temur Battle Rage on the Tarmogoyf doesn't kill him. He takes a 6, he goes to 7. If Justin Cohen's draw was a Liliana Veil, which I'm pretty sure it was, it doesn't do very much, and then John Sauer wins, and that's exactly what he does.
I think the attack with the flyer there was pretty close to free the last turn for Sauer, but I think he was just in a position where he felt like he could play around a string of draws, some weird cantrip into multiple cards sort of scenario there, and just played slightly more defensive on the last turn.
John Sauer does win game number 1 here over Justin Cohen. Bant Eldrazi up a game here over Death Shadows. We take a look at the sideboards. We'll start with the player on your left. That's Justin Cohen, who's got 3 Lingering Souls, 2 Fatal Push, 2 Surgical Extraction, 2 Fulminator Mage. And here come the fun ofs in Ranger of Eos, Ancient Grudge, Kataki Wars, Wage, Grafdigger's Cage, Aethersworn Canonist, and a Terminate.
So the easy stuff here, 2 copies of Fatal Push and a Terminate, I think are easy upgrades here. Then the question is, does Cohen think he can win the game going long? He can convert into a Lingering Souls, Fulminator Mage, Ranger of Eos style deck and try to drag the game out and overpower Sauer. I think that line is really hard for Cohen. I think even with the late game effects in his deck, Sauer still got a pretty dramatic edge in the late game. I would focus on just having a couple more removal spells, but Cohen may want to go into playing a deeper game here with cards like Ranger of Eos and Lingering Souls.
For John Sauer, he has 3 Rest in Peace, 2 Blessed Alliance, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Natural State, 2 Stubborn Denial, or Hurkyl's Recall, and a Warship.
So the Blessed Alliance seems like a very easy card to bring in here. The fringe cases to me are the 3 copies of Rest in Peace. Cohen does do a lot of stuff with his graveyard, but it's also a blank if he's playing against Death Shadow, or it can be a blank. And then the 1 copy of Warship. If he thinks that Cohen is leaning on a lot of removal, Warship might be dodgy, but it's also potentially a single card lock, so that card may come in.
Those are the options there for both players. They will sideboard, shuffle up, and we'll watch game number 2 here in just a moment. In the meantime, we're going to kick things off here with the StarCityGames.com weekly sale. It's going to end this Monday. Got a little time to get a little bit of a discount on some standard singles.
Yep. Every week over at Star City Games, there is a sale, so make sure to be going back to the website at least once a week to see what the new sale is. Wide range, it switches every week, so make sure to be checking back to see if your favorite cards go on sale. Right now, up to 50% off select standard singles.
We will have a new sale at 11 a.m. Eastern, StarCityGames.com. Make sure you do check that out every single week, 11 a.m. East Coast time, as we head back down to our match here between Justin Cohen and John Sauer. Death Shadow, Bant Eldrazi, the 2 best performing decks thus far. A lot of weekend left, a lot of tournament left, but Death Shadow doing well, not much of a surprise. Bant Eldrazi, a deck that consistently kind of flies under the radar, but it's a pretty good deck.
Yeah, and this has looked like a very good metagame for main deck engineered explosives, as we have seen a lot of successful decks that are trying to flood the battlefield with really cheap permanents, and I'm sure that card has done a lot of heavy lifting for Sauer over the course of day 1.
Card that has really impressed in this particular format, really good against just about everything in the format. Even combo decks like Storm have of course, their cost reducers and sometimes go towards empty the warrants, and their explosives even cleans up there. So it's a really nice card in this format.
Yeah, it did work. We had Sauer on camera against Caleb Schur earlier on day one, and the copies of Engineered Explosives were able to answer Barrel, Chief of Compliance, in a spot where that was really significant. So even against the decks where you wouldn't expect it to be good, yesterday for Sauer, we saw it in action and be powerful.
Take a quick moment here to talk about the StarCityGames.com newsletter as well. It is your source for Magic the Gathering news, and as most of you do know by now, it's free to sign up for.
Yeah, it's your source for Magic the Gathering news with highlights from some of Star City Games' best articles, upcoming SCG Tour dates and locations. You can find the nearest Star City Games invitational qualifiers or game nights closest to you, an exclusive Cardboard Crack comic, and best of all, as Cedric mentioned, signing up is free over at go.starcitygames.com/newsletter.
Justin Cohen, John Sauer, we're going to watch them play here in just a moment. 79 players in the day number 2 of competition here from Indianapolis. Healthy turnout as we sold out this event, just like we did Baltimore. So many thanks to all the players who did come out to the Indianapolis Convention Center here this weekend. Healthy attendance in our Sunday tournaments as well, and our standard and modern classics. Modern continued being a very popular format. I think everyone now kind of knows what they're signing up for and having a lot of fun as a result.
Yes. I know there is some people that turn their nose up to Modern, but clearly popular among the Magic community as a whole.
I'm not one of them. I love Modern.
You gotta know what you're signing up for.
I love it. Did I die on turn 3? Yeah. Yeah, I did. That's fine.
The only criticism that I have about the format as a player, it can be dispiriting sometimes how much it feels like the die roll matters.
That can be tough.
Because in Legacy it matters too, but at least the ways of defending yourself for 0 and 1 mana are powerful enough that it's not a death sentence being on the draw, though play draw definitely matters. I mean, it's a format with Daze and Wasteland. Those cards are very good on the play.
Oh, are they?
Much better on the play.
This is true.
But even that doesn't prevent me from enjoying Modern. It's just a criticism that I feel as a player. But the other side of that is when I win the die roll, I'm like, this person's just dead. They needed that, and they didn't get it.
Yeah, it's a real sweat.
Yeah,
it's a real sweat. I was playing Grand Prix Vancouver last weekend with Revolt Zoo, and I was really kind of all in on the die roll.
That sounds right.
Yeah. My opponent did roll an 11. I rolled a 12, and I got way too excited. I won as a result.
It's a big swing.
It is. It is a huge swing.
Biggest top deck of the match.
We head over to John Sauer now after Justin Cohen plays on Marsh Flats. Biggest top deck before things even started.
Yeah.
And Eldrazi Temple is a good place to start. Justin Cohen going to figure out what he wants to do here. With that fetch land, going to sacrifice the Marsh Flats. Down to at least 19. Wouldn't surprise me if he goes down to 17 here. He has a Death Shadow deck after all. Might be thinking Blood Crypt.
Yeah, what I could gather from looking through Cohen's deck right now as he's resolving this Marsh Flats, I don't think he went into the late game stuff. I don't think he touched Lingering Souls and Ranger Vios, which is my instinct here as well. He's not favored in a late game against Eldrazi, even if he does find those cards.
Don't want to play against something like Drowner of Hope or Eldrazi Displacer for very long.
Yep.
Cohen did fall down to 17. Picked up a copy of Traverse the Uvenwald.
Particularly because a lot of his removal, it doesn't touch the top end of Sauer's deck. He's on Fatal Push and Abrupt Decay and Tarfire, and that's just not very good against Reality Smasher and Drowner of Hope.
Overgrown Tomb enters the battlefield untapped. Cohen's going to fall down to 15. He'll play a Tarmogoyf, and we're going to head back over to John Sauer. It's a brush land. It's an Eldrazi Displacer, and Justin Cohen will be taking his 3rd turn of the game. We'll get the sizing on that Tarmogoyf and our Tarmogoyf die out there, so we know just how big that Lurgoyf is. Tarfire the draw.
Modern constructed number
You can
2
see Sauer's hand here. Very powerful, but he needs to draw a blue source of mana. And another land to boot. I think the rest of his hand right now is uncastable.
From Modern constructed number 2.
Just a baby Tarmogoyf right now, but it can grow pretty quickly. There's a Tarfire in hand for Cohen. He's got to traverse the Uvenwald. He can add quite a bit to it.
So right now he could sacrifice the Bloodstained Mire and enable Revolt to use the Fatal Push. But that's his whole turn, and the leftovers in his hand are Traverse the Uvenwald, and he's nowhere near Delirium. I like this attack because the Tarfire can make the Tarmogoyf a 3/4.
I couldn't block her in a million years.
Yeah, I'll take the 1.
Yeah.
I'll take
There's
1.
nothing-
Just come on.
There's nothing you can get me to do to block right now. Displacer's unbelievable in the matchup. Just
Take 1.
it's free.
I'll take a point of damage. Do you have any effects before damage? Yes.
Attaboy, John.
Good discipline.
Yeah.
As much as I like to just snap people off
Me
and
too.
block,
Me too.
I think on the balance you're better served to fight another day.
Yeah. Bloodstained Mire here from Cohen's going to bring him down to at least 14. We'll see how low he wants to go. Like you, I do like to snap some people off. You're going to try to get a point on me?
I respect thinking about it.
Who likes to snap people off more, you or Todd Anderson?
Todd Anderson. Todd for sure.
You're not getting a point in on him. Here's Liliana, the last hope. Eldrazi Displacer is now a 1/2 as we head over to John Sauer. Drowner of Hope to draw. That's not a good one.
Yep. Needs a land and needs blue mana. At least he has another Displacer to play this turn, so it's not a turn off, but
He might just want to leave up a Displacer activation, though.
yeah. So I think this line was a lot more efficient for Cohen last turn, just playing the Liliana and using all of his mana. The downside is that I don't think he can currently trigger Revolt. Now he has a lot of draw steps that get him there.
Yes.
But his hand right now is quite poor. It's the Tarfire, I guess, and Tarfire also doesn't even get him to Delirium just yet. Now the Inquisition is a nice draw here.
Pretty healthy draw step.
As Inquisition gets a Sorcerer in the graveyard, and then the Tarfire, card types 3 and 4, that grows the Tarmogoyf. More importantly, it then turns on Delirium, and from there the Traverse the Uvenwalds can find some Death Shadows. The problem with this Inquisition draw, though, is that it does not do anything to enable the Fatal Push.
Inquisition of Kozilek. It's a pretty good hand here for Justin Cohen to look at. Path to Exile, couple copies of Drowner of Hope.
I think it's just Path to Exile and big stuff.
Yeah.
I guess there's the Sky Spawner, but against Liliana, that card's not doing a whole lot here. So I would imagine the card is going to be Path to Exile.
Drowner, Sky Spawn, 2 Drowners. Actually, it might be 3 Drowners. Jeez. Thought Not Seer, Sky Spawner, and a Path. Yeah, there's the rubbish. Can't take those. So Sky Spawner and Path are the options here.
And he does suggest to Cohen here that he's got to focus on getting this game over with as fast as possible.
Pretty much.
As the Sauer starts putting together some lands and some blue mana, the leftovers here are going to be really hard for Cohen to compete with.
3/4 Goyf here. And it looks like here comes Tarmogoyf. Pretty free attack. But Cohen taking his time. Oh, yeah.
Go up top.
No, I think you go towards the Displacer, right? And then you plus Liliana to finish it
that's
off.
much better.
Yeah.
That's much better.
Easy there, cowboy.
Yeah, that's much better.
4/5.
Excuse me.
Look, I know that you just got done playing Burn all last weekend, so you play approximately one way.
What are you at, 17? Yeah, that's good enough.
Yeah, Tarfire's going up. I know. 4 types now here for Justin. Plus Liliana, finish off the Displacer. There we go. And now he can traverse for Death Shadow if he'd like.
I would actually assume that he's getting a Tarmogoyf here. Yeah. Sauer is going to be focusing his attacking energy for a while, I think, at just wearing down Liliana. And Cohen doesn't have a lot of enablers in his hand to make his life total go down. He's on a Fatal Push and another Traverse. So
let's see what Justin wants to get. I might be thinking land. A little surprised by that. Polluted Delta. So I think the thought process here is get a land that triggers Revolt for my Fatal Push.
Yep.
I have another Traverse in my hand for a threat. I don't want Displacer to work its way into the equation this game at all. And you know what, John? Your hand's pretty bad. So I just want to get this over with if I can. He might even go get the basic Swamp here, yeah. Turn on Revolt, kill that now, keep on moving. Force the draw here for John Sauer.
And it's at least something. Lets him cast something.
Yeah, there's a Thought Knots here. You see when it does have Delirium, it can search for any land
non-basics,
card.
yes.
It gets good with Delirium, and it's not hard to turn on in this deck at all. So Thought Knot Seer coming down pretty big here because it allowed John to take the other Traverse. However, he's still got to contend with a Tarmogoyf. Thump.
As a reminder, Magic players, we are currently taking
Inquisition.
for today's 11 a.m.
3 Drowners in hand.
So running lands, one of which makes blue mana, I think is kind of where Sauer's gotten to.
Yep.
wanting to play in one of these events,
Or if he draws a path.
Also fine.
There's a lot of routes here.
I think he should. Yeah, I think he should attack. I don't think he needs to go into chump blocking territory yet.
And chump blocking seems not palatable to me.
Yeah. I mean, getting into Liliana is not great. He's just going to go for the life total, pass the turn back. And what's interesting here, if he does draw a blue source, that's a pretty nice job of bridging the gap. Now, I think Cohen may have drawn another copy of Traverse. If that's the case, John Sauer's in a lot of trouble. Here comes Tarmogoyf again. John's going to fall down to 3. Justin is a reach-in. And now he's a cast-in, a Traverse the Uvenwald with Delirium yet again. Now, he only has 1 green source, so he can't search up and play a Tarmogoyf. So you already see him bring Death Shadow forward. Also, if he had a Gorkland Rampager in his deck to search for, he couldn't search for it and kill Sauer this turn because of a lack of a second green source. So now, just going to play a 4/4 Death Shadow, pass a turn back. John has drawn an Engineered Explosives.
And the Explosives is part of the reason I think I would have preferred for Sauer to go after the Liliana. Some of his removal, like Engineered Explosives, puts things into the graveyard. So there is some value in wearing down Liliana on that axis in case Cohen needs to go to the Raised Dead mode.
Because now EE is kind of meh. He'll play it for 1. It'll get to blow up a Death Shadow temporarily, but then Cohen can just get it back with Liliana.
Yep. I mean, Sauer's draw steps need to be super cooperative from here.
And Justin's need to not be good.
Yes.
It's the 1-2 punch.
And he has to chump block with a Thought Knot Seer this turn, most likely, which is another draw step.
Also bad. Also bad. Rocking a hard place.
modern classic players, that is time in the round. Active players.
Cycle Street Wraith here will Justin Cohen. He's going to fall down to 7, draw a card.
If you have a time extension,
Didn't get a great look.
any questions about this process,
Beat down seemed good though. Thought Knot Seer is going to have to jump in front of Tarmogoyf. Engineered Explosives will be activated to take care of Death's Shadow here in just a moment. And now that Thought Knot Seer will go to the graveyard as well. Justin Cohen will draw a card from the Thought Knot trigger. Picks up a Forest to go along with another copy of Tarmogoyf.
Really good setup here. Can get back the Death Shadow, cast Tarmogoyf.
I think we're probably all finished here. I don't think there's a card in John Sauer's deck that he can draw now. Before, he was drawing to a blue source to be able to double chump block with Eldrazi Sky Spawner and the Scion.
But not even that because of Liliana.
Also
I think he was
true.
cut off.
Yep.
Yeah, he was cut off for a bit here.
He's picked up a copy of Ancient Stirrings. He might cast this, he may not, but there is not a sequence of events that can happen here for John Sauer to win this particular game, and he will concede. So Justin Cohen will win game number 2 here against John Sauer. Death Shadow, Eldrazi going to game number 3.
And Sauer kept a pretty speculative hand there. Missing blue mana. If he finds a blue source of mana early on in that game, his hand becomes quite good, but didn't do it in time. I think that hand's keepable because he had enough to do in the first couple turns of the game. He had a lot of draw steps to it, never found it, and eventually got run over.
Take a look at the sideboards here yet again. You see that Justin Cohen's got those lingering souls that we don't like bringing in. Do you like Fulminator Mage at all? Is that anything for you?
No, I think that Cohen's major edge in the matchup is just speed and efficiency. I think any attempts to drag the game down, to slow it down, is really favorable for Sauer. Once Sauer gets to his top end, it's very, very hard for Cohen to compete. So I think over the course of that game, we saw Cohen go through his deck multiple times. I don't think I saw the Lingering Souls. I don't think I saw Fulminator Mage, and that makes sense to me.
And I don't think John Sauer is going to change too much either. He's already starting to shuffle up here for game number 3. Taking a look at the sideboard, obviously a very important match here for both players as they're looking to make top 8. So they want to make sure they are ready to go, and we'll give them the time to do so. In the meantime, however, there is a pre-release that's coming up pretty soon. Amonkhet is almost here. We'll have previews coming out soon enough from Wizards of the Coast and from all the various content producers out there that are involved in Magic. But as most of you do know, Star City Games does kind of bolster the local pre-release experience. We'll be doing that yet again with our newest member of the Creature Collection.
Say hello to the newest member of the StarCityGames.com pre-release exclusive Creature Collection, Amonkhet. Illustrated by fan favorite Andrea Radek, this solemn sphinx has claimed an honored place in the afterlife of Magic's newest desert oasis. Want this limited edition playmat at your pre-release? Have your local store contact StarCityGames.com by March 7th to get signed up today. For more information, visit go.starcitygames.com/pre-release to learn how to make your Amonkhet pre-release rise among the worthy.
Go.starcitygames.com/pre-release for more information. As you see, Dan Musser walking away with a coffee and a match slip. Just business as usual for the Muss man.
I believe X1 at this point.
Yeah, Eldrazi.
We caught his one loss so far on tournament yesterday.
Eldrazi Mirror.
Worship and Elspeth.
And a whole bunch more.
Yeah.
Jeez. This deck, Eldrazi, it's weird. So it kind of reminds me of like a rock deck, kind of. It's way better than that, obviously, because it has Displacer and Thought Knot Seer and Drown and all that stuff. But it's just this kind of 4-of deck to me.
Yep.
All good cards. You know, I'm not ever impressed by Eldrazi Sky Spawner, but it does play a role.
If you get your stuff on the table against someone else who's playing to the table, your stuff's going to be better a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You have a little bit of removal and a little bit of interaction to pick apart their synergies or their stray cards that are better than yours. And otherwise, you're just trying to get Drowner of Hope and Reality Smasher lined up against Tarmogoyf. And this deck's very powerful and very effective at doing that.
It's funny, you even take a look at the sideboard in the main deck. You know, it's called Eldrazi, which implies it's 3 colors. The green in the deck is not for much. It's for Noble Hierarch and Ancient Stirrings.
Ancient Stirring is a great selection for this deck.
Yeah, I mean, great card, no question, but it's almost kind of a white-blue deck that's splashing green. Not very hard to do, but that's kind of what it's doing. Both these players will be underway here in just a moment here for game number 3.
I think Sauer might be looking at another land light, high upside hand like he saw in game number 2.
Well, he just said I'll keep. How many lands he's playing? 22 probably?
22.
Okay. He's got Talismans and Hierarchs too.
Yep. 4 Temple, a Gemstone Cavern, you know, a couple basics, a couple Pain lands, 4 Windswept Heath.
Okay. Cohen taking a long look at it now.
No waste in the deck. Mulliganing very challenging with Death Shadow. because of, one, the complexity of the deck, and two, you are often on baubles and street wraiths, which give you less information for what your opening hand really looks like.
Draw step of Death's Shadow here for Justin Cohen.
And you can see his opening hand here with a street wraith and a bauble. So not working with a ton of information for what his 7 actually will look like.
Well, he cycled a street wraith into a stomping ground, so that might be helpful.
It looks like Sauer kept a hand with no castables. He has Forest, Temple, and then white and blue cards.
Love it. Let's do this. Cycle another street wraith into a bloodstained mire. This is where you love to cast a discard spell, see what you're working against.
Yep.
And you just see, I can't wait to see I'm going to lose this one.
Because the Temple is a very threatening opening.
It's very threatening. One could argue the best opening for the deck.
But there may not be a follow-up.
Bauble. Bloodstained Mire. Cohen's hand right now, a couple copies of Fatal Push, Kolaghan's Command, Death's Shadow, a couple lands. Sauer will draw. Ugh.
Woof. That's a tough draw right there.
Gemstone Cavern in the house, folks. Oof. Boy. Cohen's going to target himself with the bauble here.
With a fetch land, can turn that into a scry, essentially.
Yeah. Boy, that was ugly.
Wow. Peeled a land, even.
He sure did.
He's nowhere closer to casting anything in his hand.
Come on, top deck. That was brutal.
That was brutal. This is back-to-back highly speculative hands from Sauer.
There's a lot of upside.
I think, yeah, the game 2 hand felt that's a keepable hand to me. The game 3 hand, this is pushing my limit.
Cohen looks like he's going to sacrifice for the Bloodstained Mire here in just a moment. I think he may have missed his bauble trigger. Let's take a look at Mr.'s bauble.
He could still be in the upkeep, I think.
He might be. I'm not sure.
I think he drew and now is thinning.
Okay.
I think. Or at least that could be the case.
Yeah. It's a little unclear. You draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep.
This, by the way, is just the worst trigger in Magic. There's a reason. There's a reason that this appeared. Yeah, he got it.
He got it. Yeah.
He got it.
I mean, I don't expect him to miss it.
Even Magic's game design sensibilities in the late 90s, not the best by modern standards, said, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
This is really bad.
Delay trigger? Yeah.
That resolves into upkeep, which is not a place where you often have to stop the action to do things.
Here's Death's Shadow. 2-2 right now. Big draw. Big draw. Temple.
Okay, I think that lets him cast the... well, he can cast the Thought-Knot Seer now, I think.
Yes, he can.
That's something.
All right. Does he have Adhikar Waste?
No, he does not have Adhikar Waste or Hallowed Fountain.
Boy, boy, he could use one of those. What's the worst blue-white land in Magic? Because he would take one.
The worst blue-white land. The one in Ice Age, the Lava Tube cycle. And he would take it. That land's pretty bad.
Okay.
What's the Bant part of the Wizard School cycle from Homelands?
That's what you're here for.
It makes it colorless even. I mean, he would definitely play with that.
Yeah, that's what you're here for, man.
Is it on Hava something or other?
I don't know. I don't know.
But he would take that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Let's go back over to Justin Cohen. Whatever the blue-white land is from Kamigawa, because that land's horrible, just doesn't untap.
Yeah. A lot of cycles of lands that don't untap.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to bother me. I think it's Anhava something.
Someone on social media knows. Get at us. Hashtag SCGINDY. Here comes Death Shadow.
The Wizard School part of the cycle. That is part of my issue with keeping a hand this speculative is he doesn't have a single land in the deck that he can draw that enables everything. He's all on Yavimaya Coast, Breeding Pool, Temple Garden, Brushland, etc. You have an added card waste, you have a Hallowed Fountain, and expands the range of big draws you have to tie everything together as it stands. He needs 2 lands, essentially.
He's got to rip off that Talisman.
Yeah.
That's what it
yeah,
is.
the Talisman does it.
Yeah. Cohen's gotten in a hit here with the Death Shadow. And now here's an Inquisition of Kozilek. Path to Exile, Eldrazi Displacer times 2. The disgusting Gemstone Caverns. And a Drowner of Hope is the hand here for John Sauer.
So Cohen, I think, is still sitting on a little bit of removal. Hi, Cohen, I guess just checking to see if this can actually do anything. It cannot.
No, it cannot.
For the record. Still on multiple copies of Fatal Push, and Cohen is Threat Light, so I imagine Path is the card. And it is.
Modern Classic players, if there is no one...
There it is. Boom.
Ace and Abbey?
First of all, taps for colorless mana, so Sauer's already in the market for this.
You got to work for the other colors, man.
Oh, yeah. There's a reason these cards didn't show up a whole lot.
Two tap?
Yeah.
For a blue or a green? Why is the white one cheaper than the other two?
Because the cycle is tap for a colorless, tap it in 1 to make a mana, or tap it in 2 to make the allied colored mana. There are 5 of these in Homelands. So Wizard School, for example, is tap 1 and tap it in a colorless for a blue, or tap it in 2 for white or black.
This is the worst card I've ever seen.
That's not true.
This is it.
If Sauer could put it on the top of his deck right now, he would. So don't tell me it's the worst card you've ever seen.
That is the worst card I've ever seen.
He would pay money out of pocket right now to put that card on the top of his deck.
My goodness. Sauer's turn was just a pass. Justin Cohen going to sacrifice a fetch land. It'll be a Verdant Catacombs. That'll bring him down a little bit lower, which means Death Shadow's going to get a little bit larger.
Yeah.
There's a Godless Shrine. Cohen down to 8, which means Death Shadow up to a 5/5.
To register for our 11 a.m. Sealed Spectacular. If you would like to play Sealed with us at 11, please make sure you are up at the stage by 10:50 so we can start on time.
The leftovers in Cohen's hand, though, not great. I mean, the removal spells is very nice to have to get rid of the Thought-Knot Seer and draw a card, but Sauer can cobble together some blue mana here or a removal spell. We're kind of in draw-go territory for the time being.
Yeah, 3 Fatal Pushes right now in Cohen's hand. That's a lot of those. I'm going to push Thought-Knot Seer around. That'll die, trigger, Cohen will draw a card, picked up Verdant Catacombs.
But now I think Cohen would have preferred a threat, but at least that's another fetch land to enable a future revolt on the Fatal Push.
Make Death Shadow a little bit larger, too. Yeah, Kolaghan Command myself, thanks.
Yeah, you discard a card and I'll take 2
Yep.
or whatever.
Wasn't sure if we were going to see it, but I actually think we are.
I mean, it's mana efficient. Let's Cohen tap out this turn.
That is true.
Oh, he has a Street Wraith in the graveyard.
That's
Okay, that's
adorable.
very good.
Yeah.
Then it's quite solid.
Get back the Street Wraith, cycle the Street Wraith.
Yeah, draw a card
Deal
off that.
2 to you. Pick up a copy of Tarfire. Hopefully I get to hit myself with that. Big draw. That's not alive.
Yep. That could have been a big draw if Cohen's hand was a little different.
Yep. Noble Hierarch, not you. Cohen at 6, Sauer at 9. 13 minus 6 means that Death Shadow is a 7/7.
I think this is
I think
lethal.
he's just dead, yeah.
Yeah, I think between the Fatal Push for a Noble Hierarch and the Tarfire going in either direction, this should be lethal in a moment.
Tarfire, you choose.
Yeah.
Me or you. Either is totally fine. Fatal Push there. You can sacrifice a fetch land here. The world is Justin Cohen's oyster. So he's made it look pretty easy all weekend long.
I think Sauer needed to throw this one back. I know that's easy to say after back-to-back games of this. I was down with the keep in game number 2 because he had stuff to do and the hand had a really high ceiling.
Okay.
And it also only needed one land to come together. This, not so much.
Justin Cohen going to win this match here over John Sauer. 2-1. Death Shadow will take care of Bant Eldrazi. Some questionable hands kept there by Sauer. I agree with you. I think game 2 I would keep it. Heck, even game 3 I might keep that hand too. It's got an Eldrazi Temple. There's some upside there.
Well, yeah, if he had more access to blue and white mana off of one card, that would be different. But because we're only talking about 2 Talisman of Progress to glue that hand together, because he was on Forest plus the Temple.
Yep.
And his hand was all white and blue cards. I guess you could talk yourself into thinking that Noble Hierarch is a draw step that also gets you there, but that's unlikely because
that's gonna die a lot.
Tarfires and Fatal Pushes and Liliana of the Veils.
Yeah.
So you're really drawing to 2 copies of Talisman of Progress or multiple cards to get to blue and white mana. And I think once the hand is that speculative, you got to go back and get a 6-card hand.
Yeah, I mean, Caverner's Soul is also an option. That can fix things.
Yep.
We can't forget about that.
Yeah, Cavern's in play, and there's 3 copies in the deck.
Okay.
But we're still drawing very thin to a functional hand.
Sure.
Because there's only so many cards in the deck that generate both blue and white mana, and the hand needs it, and it needs it really fast because of the matchup. It's not like you have all the time in the world to draw out.
Yeah, that's true. Death Shadow continues to Death Shadow. Looked impressive yet again. The nice thing about this deck, too, as we've seen so many times, just it's kind of flexibility and all the things that it can do. It's got a lot of spot removal for 1 mana. Kolaghan's Command plays very well in the deck. You do have to keep some kind of weird hands with Street Wraith and with Bobble. So, you know, that part of it is a little bit strange. But once you kind of overcome that hurdle, it's a really good deck.
Yep. I mean, that is the major drawback of cards like Urza's Bobble and Street Wraith that I don't think people discuss enough. Is just the lack of information on your opening hands. You end up with, 2 mystery cards and 5 cards, and sometimes those hands are no lands or 2 lands, and if one of the top cards of your deck is a land, you have a land-heavy hand that maybe you would have sent back. That said, those cards are so powerful in those decks for a variety of reasons, and with the fetch lands, with fetch lands, the Urza Bobble on yourself, you can assemble a Scry. Urza Bobble on them, Mistress Bobble on them, you can look at the top card of the deck and have more information on what you want to do with your discard or how you sequence your spells. So it isn't just 0 mana draw a card. Those cards are doing work beyond that. As you saw, Kolaghan's Command get back a Street Wraith. That's functionality that Kolaghan's Command doesn't have that often. And Cohen was working with a lot more information about how he wanted to sequence his spells because he was able to look at the top card of his own deck or Sauer's deck as appropriate.
It's break time here from Indianapolis. When we do come back, of course, it's players to watch and round number 11 of action. So we'll see you guys back here for all that. Just